we're rolling now.
Hi everyone, I'm here with Fred at the Unite rally in Stockport. How are you, Fred?
I'm alright, how are you?
Yeah, good thanks mate, good thanks. Can you tell us why you're here today and what you hope to get from it?
I got told to turn up here because Stand Up to Racism are going to be here protesting or something. However, the PA system is really quiet, so I've got no idea what it is that they want to protest for. And they're all wearing the same signs, they're all holding the same signs, saying the same things. And when you go and talk to them, they refuse to talk to you. And then they try and put things in the way of your camera. And then it's like, well, so you're out here protesting in public to spread your message. And then when someone wants to, amplify your message with a camera so that you can express yourself, they're like, no, I'm not talking to you.
Okay, so I mean, I think we've had the same on both sides, but what would you like to say to them then? If you could have a kind of rational conversation, what would you say?
I'm not really interested in changing their minds, but I'm interested in asking them questions and getting them to express, like what you're doing now. But we're willing to do that with you guys, but they're not willing to do that with us. So the whole point was to get them to come and talk to each other, and then if they decide to get angry or to be not angry or to react or not react, then that's all on the camera for people to view, and then people can make their own minds up. That's the idea.
I get that, but let's say you're having a conversation, you got into kind of whatever you'd want to talk about. What is it that you'd say? What is it you'd try and have a conversation about?
Well, I'd say I would say, what is it that you're protesting against? Because the far right is a very specific thing from the 1930s as far as people are concerned. A lot of these people are like nationalist British people, and they're calling them Nazis, National Socialists or Fascists, which is like specific ideology from the 1930s that's got nothing to do with today whatsoever. And then I'd ask them, what is it that makes you think people are equal and deserve to be treated equally? Why is it that you support ideologies which have led to the destruction of economies and the deaths of millions throughout the 20th century over and over and over and over again? Why are you attached to this ideology from the late 1800s, come up by some homeless drunk guy, well, not homeless, but he ended up making his family destitute, aka Karl Marx, who uses rich, wealthy factory-owning friend to finance this ideology which led to the deaths of millions. So that's what I'm interested in.
Okay, so I guess that's a point about kind of the working class.
Yeah.
So if you were talking to them about the working class, would you say class is not the real issue? Is that kind of?
I would say it's not a real issue, no, because once people have got enough money, then they suddenly go, I'm not part of that class anymore. So the thing is that what the left doesn't understand is that class is a temporary thing because people move up and down the social hierarchy all the time. So people that were once rich become poor, people that were poor become rich. So a lot of people, like for instance, in the 1930s and 1940s, for instance, in this country especially, your class is not about how much money you make. It's like how you wore, the food that you ate, the things that you said, the way that you talked, the way that you said. So a lot of people that were from aristocratic families ended up not very rich themselves, whereas lots of people who became merchants ended up surpassing the aristocracy in terms of their wealth. So I'd say that class isn't the real thing, no, and the thing that does bind people together is family connection and being related to people. So for instance, I often tell people, I said, if someone gave you a gun and said, or put a gun to your head and said, your child dies or someone else's child dies, you choose for someone else's child to die rather than your own. It doesn't mean that you hate the other person's child, it's just that your genetics, they see themselves and want themselves to go forward. And so people that are like yourselves become the nation, become the group, people that group animals and rely on each other in order to survive.
Yeah, so, I mean, I kind of get that, but to go back to your other class point, so what someone I think here would say is there's a cost of living crisis.
Sure.
And would you agree that there is a cost of living crisis?
Yeah, I'd say I'd say so. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. So what they might say is there's a cost of living crisis. Lots of people, say 95% of people, feel like they cannot move up the classes anymore. They can't reach that kind of point where they feel secure in their finances.
Sure.
And actually, it's that ability to move up and down that people have lost now. Whereas I think you're right. They would have said sort of in the 60s, 70s that was available to you.
Yeah.
You could move up and down.
Yeah.
And it's actually fighting to bring that back, that mobility, to move up into the
and how would you do that?
Well, I think what a lot of people would say is you need to redistribute the finances and the wealth in the country more fairly.
Right.
What would you say to that?
I would say that it doesn't matter how well you distribute finances equally or not equally, because people's habits are the same. And we've got, like, for instance, during COVID, we furloughed everybody's wages for like 2 years. So if you look at this country, like 53% of people are on benefits, pay more benefits than they get taxes back. It's not really changed anything because the money is the symbol of value. Money is just a token of value. And so the actual things, like, for instance, inflation, right, means that a tenner today is worth 5 from yesterday. So people get so attached to the minimum wage and these, like, symbols of value, and they it doesn't really change the reasons behind where the actual why things are costing as much as they are.
Yeah.
So
I completely agree that money is what we believe it to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's say, for instance, that, well, it's the case that the top 10 richest families in the UK own more wealth than the bottom 50%.
Sure.
Do you think that that is a kind of stable situation for a country to be in?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, definitely not. But I think it's the government being able to influence the economy, which is what allows people to get as wealthy as they are. Because when the government can control, like, for instance, like with the NHS or Network Rail, like, for instance, I'm actually for rail nationalisation.
Right. Yes.
Because you can't build any more infrastructure.
No, it's monopoly, isn't it?
Exactly. But for instance, once you, like, these rail companies we've got now are using the government, and because they're limited pool, they can't have any competition. So they can charge whatever they want.
Water, right?
Right. Exactly. But so that's annoying, isn't it? Like, that's like we already can't hear what the people are saying anyway, and now people are playing signs over the top. Anyway, so what was the question again? Sorry.
So it's not a suitable situation for the economy, is it, to have 10 families that have as much as, say, the bottom 50%?
No.
And I think your argument there is the government isn't doing the right thing. It's actually making the situation worse.
Well, let's look at this then. So look at, like, Boeing and Lockheed Martin and these companies that work hand in glove with the government. That actually is fascism. That's called corporatism, where the government and the state and work with big business by, like, hand in glove, right? But when the government decides to cause a war, now they've created an artificial need where there was none, and now there's a need for there's a massive need for weapons and tanks and planes and jets and all that type of stuff. So it's the government's action using other people's money which has actually driven these people, which makes the people impossibly rich. Because if you become a captain of industry, it's because often the government is your top customer, and the government doesn't act rationally. You get, like, for instance, like with your money, you think, have I got enough money to pay for this? Have I not got enough money to pay for this? But when the government's spending other people's tax money, then they've got the ability to go, I don't care about what the consequences are. Like, this guy called Thomas Sowell, he's a black economist, right? He says the worst thing you can do is put money and decisions in the hands of people that pay no price for it being wrong.
Right, yeah.
So that's what I mean. So every time government intervention leads to these, like, giant monopolies. So I would say that, like, corporatism, fascism, and leftism, they lead to, like, these, like, to giant monopolies.
Can I push back a little bit?
Sure.
And say, I think a lot of people here would actually say that we don't want government to do that. We actually are against big business. We want government to redistribute resources to the communities that need it most, not to Lockheed Martins, your arms companies, your things like that. And so actually they would say, like, the current Labour government are disappointed with them because Labour are not distributing resources in a way that they would find effective.
Okay.
What would you say to that then? So how would you distribute resources if you don't think the current economy is set up fairly?
Well, I'll push back on it, right? And that when you had the communist revolutions in the past, they created a new class of people that, because when you redistribute resources, someone has to decide where those resources are redistributed to. And so that creates a new elite class. So instead of the kulaks and the business owners, you now got people that are with the government, and they decide who gets what amount of food, etc.
Yeah.
So,
and do you think that always has to be the case, that a new class of elites are created, or do you think there could be a situation where the people pick a government that actually is for working people, or for
you can't pick that. You can't pick that because people are inherently selfish and are tempted to commit crime when the offer's good enough. So, you say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So once you give people the ability to game the system, and so they will always take it. And so every time that you vote a new communism or leftism into power, what it does is it opens opens the government up to the mafia to take control and decide what happens after that.
You know what? I think that's a really interesting point, because I would say, personally, I don't think people are inherently selfish. I would say there are instances in history where people have given their lives for others.
Sure.
And actually, if the right people are picked, and I agree with you that too much power in anyone's hands is never a good thing.
Yeah.
If power is distributed among a wide group of people, you might be able to avoid those pitfalls.
No, I'd say none of us are as stupid as all of us. So when you put the hands in collective decision, like people in groups act in psychopathic, crazy sort of ways. Look at how crowds of riots act, etc. So once, like for instance, when one person starts running, the rest of the group starts running. They operate in herds, right? So realistically, like even leftists believe that. That's why they had to have like the vanguard of revolutions, etc. That would come and lead the proletariat rather than let the proletariat make their own decisions, which is just hilarious.
Well, do you think that that's why these movements failed long term? Because of that. In fact, they didn't allow the proletariat, as you said, to lead themselves.
Yeah.
And actually, it was the bourgeois who then co-opted and used these movements.
No, because it's not the bourgeoisie that do it. It's the tiny elite of people that meet, like Lenin, Trotsky, Kamenev, Zinoviev, Molotov, all these type of people, Beria, etc. All these type of people that meet in like London or Switzerland in tiny little groups that go in to take over these countries and become the new elite. Because the thing is that a vanguard can move faster and they're more agile.
Change quickly.
Exactly. So as soon as you hand power over to a large group of people, nothing will ever get done. So it ends up being these like look at Joseph Stalin was a bank robber. You know, these people like those are the people who are motivated to go and actually do anything. A lot of them are very evil type people. So they disguise these like loving principles of equality and whatever, right, under really their own selfish need to attain power, and they put it as like, we're going to give you free stuff, but it never ever works like that. I'm not saying there's no problems with any other political ideology. I'm just listing that's what the problem is with leftist ideology.
It's interesting because do you think that actually the speed of change is a negative? Because I'd say look at a situation like the US now. Trump enacts tariffs. The tariffs don't go well. Congress are supposed to have a say over that. So actually, if it was slowed down, there would be an actual better situation. But it's this kind of unilateral acting without any kind of oversight or acting without expertise that creates.
I don't know how that relates to what we're talking about.
So I'm just talking about the speed of change. Actually, if you could slow it down and you could take more time with it, you could consult experts, things like that. Do you think that would be beneficial?
No, because the thing is that the left wants people to be a new man. They want to be with new ideals that you can educate people. It believes in like blank slate equalism, that we're all the same, right? And that with a proper education, you can educate people to just be like perfect and get on in this perfect society. That's not what people are like. People are not equal to each other. People are better in some regards, worse in some regards. You're better compared to yesterday and worse compared to yesterday than you will be tomorrow. So everything's in constant flux. So you can't educate people to be better, and that people will always be the same. People are like, you do get heroic people that will be different, and you do get people that are compassionate, but people mostly, especially when you put them into groups, act in a psychopathic, non-empathetic way. So you can't.
So do you think that people can't be educated to, say, be more knowledgeable or be better? Just on that point.
You can do a bit, but you can't like overall no. And even if you are, it doesn't matter because your decisions are diluted in massive groups. So people act emotionally, right? And so emotions have to make sense. As soon as you get, like, for instance, if you start getting angry with me now, like we're on a perfectly normal level now. If you start getting angry, you wouldn't be able to answer these like sort of questions. So once you get people emotions whipped up, especially in groups, they act completely irrationally. So you'll never be able to get around that really.
Interesting. So I suppose it comes down to, so do you think that ultimately it's down to people's kind of natural kind of traits that prevents the kind of proper redistribution or effective change? And if you agree with that, what do you think the solution is?
There's no solution because there doesn't need to be a utopia. There doesn't need to be a giant change. Things are never going to be perfect. Things could be fine if we just went back to pre-1997-ish, right? If we got rid of fractional reserve banking, we got rid of the Federal Reserve, got rid of the Bank of England, got rid of the European Central Bank, we stopped having a money type system based on debt, that could improve things, right? But if we enshrined the right to freedom of speech and self-defense, and then let people get on with it, and it's not going to be perfect. There's people that are going to fall by the wayside, people that are going to have terrible situations, etc. But it's a damn sight better to the attempts to control nature that we've had with National Socialism, Fascism, Communism, all these ideologies that seek to like control and reshape man to be something other than what it is.
It's interesting because I actually think there's quite a lot of agreement there with exactly what some people here would say with things like debt is a form of entrapment and things like that. So actually, I think it's really interesting to see that maybe that are.
It's just the
points of
solutions that
agreement.
we disagree on.
Right.
We can identify the same problems. We don't like seeing a homeless person on the street. We don't like seeing people having a terrible time in other countries, etc. But it's the solutions. And these people believe that they can really change everything, and they really can't. Do you know what I mean? And so the only thing that you can change is yourself, and the only thing you've got influence over is your group. We can only help each other once we've made ourselves strong. We're going to be charitable once we've made ourselves strong. We can't change the world no matter how much money you give people. Look at homeless people on the street. You give them money, right? And they go, and then the next week they'll spend all the money and they're back on the street again. Africa has received like 3 billion or 3 trillion in aid over the past since the Second World War, and it's got no better at all whatsoever because you just can't change how people are.
Well, I suppose you can try and change systems, though, can't you? Like over time, systems have changed. And so I think in the case of Africa, like, would you agree that African countries are being exploited for their resources? So, like, you know, a lot of companies that are Western-based will extract resources and will not compensate those countries fairly.
Well, why do other countries that have natural resources manage to be industrial superpowers like Russia or Iran? You know, these people that can like even Saudi Arabia, they're suddenly very, 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 very rich, right? And they can got a lot of power and influence. But countries in Africa can't do that. Why is that? There's millions of people there. They've got a massive population, super advantaged. They're adapted to fight in that situation. They're alert. They don't catch malaria, sub-Saharan Africans, because they're adapted to live in that part of the world. You know, they know where everything is. They could easily throw us out in 1 second. Even India managed to do that. You know.
Well, I suppose the situation's different based on the context, though, isn't it? Like, all these African countries never existed as African countries until Western nations drew those borders.
Yeah.
They existed as families and tribes, like you said before, about people coming together. So actually, they weren't countries until Western nations decided. And so colonialism was a system designed to exploit. And just like you said, like India, they managed to escape colonialism, but similar issues still persist and exist.
Well, great example then, right? It's every time and I agree with you. These colonies that we set up, like in the Middle East, where we created the Middle Eastern nations, like Mexico, we created all the African nations, etc. They've ended up with millions of people who are totally different from each other, living in the same sort of area, right? And then once the power structure dissolves and the money runs out, they start fighting with each other, like Yugoslavia or the former Soviet Union or Iraq or Syria, where there's all these different ethnic groups living in a fake country basically. That's what these people are all here for, turn this country into a multicultural society, and it's going to end in total violence, just like it has over and over and over again through history. So, yeah, I would say that the colonialism has played a part in it, but also these people they don't want to live in that way. They don't, like, for instance, the climate in Europe, right, required people to evolve to prepare for winters, etc., right? So it ended up with forward planning. However, in sub-Saharan Africa, food is plentiful and danger is everywhere. So it encourages impulsive thinking. And so there's no word for like maintenance in a lot of African languages. Not like my family from South Africa, yeah. In the Xhosa language, right? They don't have words for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've got one, more than one, many, or none. Right? So these are not adapted to creating nations in the same way.
What about in the Bible, in Egypt,
Sure.
the forward planning of Joseph?
Yeah.
That was planning for a famine. So
Right.
does that not show that in Africa there was planning in biblical times?
We're talking about sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, in sub-Saharan Africa, there's still famines, there's still changing seasons, there's still having to...
Yeah, but they're unpredictable. They're unpredictable. Like, for instance, right? Perfect. They're unpredictable. So, for instance, in Europe, we've got a lack of natural disasters, right? And we've got predictable seasons. So we've got cold for a certain period of time, warm for a certain period of time, etc. Right? It's very harsh. It requires you to hunt and then prepare for things to happen. Whereas in Africa, there's so many large predators and so many different ways for you to die, like diseases, etc. Right? So it doesn't lend. Even if you were to try and create a society there, it's incredibly hard to do so because the ground is shifting constantly all the time. So there you go.
Well, I think we could talk all day. It's been really great talking to you.
Yeah,
Cheers,
nice to
mate.
meet you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, it was really interesting to listen to you.
Cool.
Right, mate. Oh shit, you're right,
Oh
yeah.
shit. Thanks, guys.